Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you are called to do. And by the way, if that whole called to do thing doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense to you, or you wonder, make sure you listen to last week's episode on how do I know my calling? Now, I don't know about you, but I have seen my own personal fitness community, as well as those of my friends, change drastically over the last 6 months. I consider myself an introvert, but I got to tell you what, after these last 6 months of shutdown / lockdown / quarantine, or whatever you want to call it, I admit I miss people. I really miss hugging people. Now, as fitness enthusiasts, our gyms and our fitness communities have experienced varying but significant changes over the last several months. Some are still closed. Some are open with restrictions. Some are open with gym floor only, but no classes. There's a whole lot of different ways that gyms and fitness centers and classes look right now, but very few look the same as they did a year ago. I'm really excited to introduce you to Kyle Wood today. I reached out to Kyle, and I'm going to tell you about him in just a second, but I reached out to him to chat about the changing dynamic of fitness right now. So to help us all kind of find our new normal, we talk about shifting from fitness marketing focused on a certain look to more positive aspects. We talk about how shaming doesn't create health changes, the power of high fives, unique ideas to create community. And I think that you will really appreciate listening to this part of it and incorporating them in your own fitness community and creating safe spaces. Kyle is a real leader in the fitness industry through his website, Bootcamp Ideas. He's a leader and a mentor to me personally, more through the online space, but I just really admire all he does for fitness professionals, particularly with the mindset behind it. Bootcamp Ideas is the go-to site for tens of thousands of group fitness trainers around the world, including me, when they're looking for training ideas, advice, and inspiration. He also has BootCraft, which is a curated group fitness workout idea database, and just a really loving, encouraging community of trainers. Kyle's values are connection and belonging. These absolutely show up in everything he does. He's also a dad of one, a husband, a video game enthusiast, a board game connoisseur, a hiker, a writer, and a deep conversation lover. And I think you will discover that is something I don't even mean to, but we just jump right into that deep conversation. Kyle's home base is in Melbourne, Australia, but his community definitely extends far beyond that. We do talk a little bit of shop, but I really do think you'll be able to come up with some great ways to connect with your people, whether that's virtually, in person, or a combination of both. Let's bring Kyle on. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I was saying actually before we started recording, I'm a little tripped out right now because it's about 149 degrees here in Houston and I'm sweating and you have a hoodie on.
Yeah, I'm chilly. It was like 6 degrees this morning. So let me just do some calculations. What's that, like 50, 55 maybe when I went for a walk this morning. So it's pretty chilly.
That's perfect weather to me.
Yeah.
I read somewhere, well, I think so. I'm actually a really warm-natured person. I read somewhere that the optimal running temperature is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm sorry, I don't do the math very well in my head with that. So that's probably 7 degrees for you?
I think you minus 30 and divide by 2. So maybe I've gone too hot then. Maybe it was more like, closer to 50 this morning.
Okay.
45, 50
Still, that's
in that band.
that's
It'd be
half
good
of
running.
what.
Yeah, temperature. Yeah.
Yeah, it is nice. It is nice. So you actually have a distinction here on the Grace Health podcast. You are not only the first male guest I have had, you are also the first international guest. So I'm glad you're here.
Awesome.
So I have introduced you a little bit to my listeners before the show started, but I was wondering if you could just take a little bit of time and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and your path to got the path of how you got there, which I know is a very open-ended, long question, but maybe you can just go into a little bit more detail with that.
Yeah, where to start? Well, this might take up the whole half hour or hour. So I guess as this is health related, I didn't get into fitness until after I had finished up high school. So that's actually a while ago now. And I did, I got talked into a gym membership by a gym salesperson, which I think we've all experienced if we've had a gym membership before. And at the time I was like, it was about, from my part-time job, it was about all the money I was making was going into this gym membership. And, at the time, and I even remember like my dad being a bit upset that I'd been talked into it, and he was all ready to, march down there and cancel it on my behalf. And, I'm glad he didn't, because it started me down this path of getting into health and fitness, which had been, I'd always played sport and stuff, but it had never been like a primary sort of focus in my life. And that sort of, going to the gym regularly led to, one of the things I really liked about going to the gym was that it was non-competitive. So I wasn't competing against, it wasn't like the sport I'd play where you're always like playing against someone else. It was just me, showing up for that time and putting the work. It was much more like camaraderie because the other people who were there exercising also doing the same thing. And it was really helpful, especially as like probably a young man, to have that sort of outlet. And that led me down the path. And then eventually I was studying engineering at the time. But while I was doing some work placement, I got my personal training qualification on the side, part-time. And
did you do that? I'm just curious, as like a way to make a little bit of extra money, or were you finding a real calling to that? Or
well, I was not enjoying the engineering work I was doing. But I'd still been going to the gym. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll sort of do this thing on the side. Yeah, as a way to make money, rather than just working in a retail store. And that got me, I got work sort of pretty quickly after that, working in a gym and then a little like personal training studio. And I think once I started making money as well through that, it was like the engineering became even less appealing. And so I ended up dropping that to pursue a career in fitness full time. But I mean, really at that point, I had no idea I'd become like an educator and sort of community leader for the industry. I just was like, this is something I enjoy doing. But I did like that sort of entrepreneurial aspect of it, that I didn't have, I wasn't in like a hierarchical business, which like a lot of engineering was. I liked that it wasn't a male dominated industry, which working in engineering had been. And, I really struggled with that sort of stereotypical male dominated sort of industry. And I really liked the blend that the fitness industry gave. And, so that's sort of how I went down that path. That's the short version.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Well, and so you are now I consider you the creator and founder of BootCraft.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is for my listeners?
Yeah. It started out as we should start with a problem, shouldn't we? So the problem all group fitness trainers have is like, and as clients, like if these are some of your clients and you rock up to the session, you're like, it's amazing. They always do something different. They always do something new. This is so good. But when you actually like grow your group fitness and start running multiple sessions a week, it's really challenging to keep coming up with engaging, fresh sort of ideas to keep your clients engaged and wanting to come back and wanting to train. So that's, I mean,
I'm over here. You can see me nodding, like nodding my head off, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that I am nodding in agreement with you.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry to interrupt.
Right. No, that's good. You got to do that with the podcasts. You got to be like, yes. Like Dale always gives me a hard time about using my hands when I talk, even though no one can see me.
Yeah.
So that was really what that was a way to sort of bring together a whole bunch of these ideas that I had, and also ideas from members in the community, and put them in one place so trainers could go to this sort of big library of training styles and ideas and games and warm-ups and things like that, and sort of pick and choose to give them inspiration in creating their own sessions, and just save them a bunch of time, because it is like a really time-consuming part of the job.
It absolutely is. And, you talk about meeting a problem, and it is, there's something that is so soul-filling about running a class and having people say, thanks, Amy, that was a great workout. But I don't know that people realize how long it takes to put together great programming, especially when you're known as the person who she does something different every time. Like
pressure's on.
You do that a few times, and then that's what you hear, and you're like, oh man, now I can't repeat that. And then I got to the point I felt bad if I repeated something from a year ago or something like that. So that has really it has been wonderful. And I will say, when COVID hit back obviously in the spring, you guys did a great job at pivoting and really providing a lot of great content that we could do over Zoom and virtually, because I was able to take a lot of that and incorporate that into the Facebook Lives I was doing and different stuff like that.
Awesome.
So one of the ways, Kyle, you and I kind of connected. So I've been a BootCraft community for a few years now, but you sent an email, and I don't know if you even remember sending this, but you sent this back at the end of 2019, like right before the new year hit.
Yep.
And you'll see what the title was: Stop Using Shaming Advertising. Do you remember this email?
Yeah,
at all?
I do, because I spent, I think I waited about 3 weeks before posting it, because it was something that was really meaningful to me, and it was then very scary for me to share it, because I didn't know how it'd be received.
Yes. Well, and it's very counterintuitive, unfortunately, to a lot of the fitness industry. So some of the things, just so the listeners know, you really challenged your community, which again are fitness leaders, trainers, coaches, not to shame people in their body in the advertising they're using to try and get them to come back to classes. I mean, or start classes at the beginning of the year. And some of the things you talked about were, focusing on, beach body or pre-baby bodies. And then I loved how you talked about, the before and after pictures, with the focus on the after pictures. And then, you said focusing on like an ideal, and I'm using those in quotations, but the ideal body, one that's not, fat or skinny or weak or, fill in the blank. And I have been on a journey personally, to help women with this same thing. I want them to be confident. I want them to be strong in their own body. A lot of it is I want them to find joy in their own movement, whatever that is. But I'm curious, Kyle, because you are not a 45-year-old woman like I am. How, if there's a story that goes along with that, or I mean, that's a really intuitive email to send, particularly, not to bag on the males, but particularly as a male.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if you might be able to go into a little bit more depth into how that came to fruition.
Yeah. I have to give a lot of credit to Brene Brown, if you've come across her work.
Brene Brown.
So, I mean, she is well, she's not but she is a very prominent shame researcher. And I came
Yes.
across her probably a decade ago and have found just consuming her work really helps me just as like being a better human, being more in touch with my own like feelings, emotions, like emotional intelligence. But also, working in the industry, when I remember when I first read it, and I wish I could remember how I got onto it originally. But when I sort of first started reading and talking, reading and watching her stuff was when I was still working as a trainer, and one of my clients was retiring as a psychologist. And so as she was easing off her foot on psychology, she was suddenly starting to look at sort of things outside of the stereotypical sort of psychologist realm. So we had great conversations about meditation, things like that. And we were both like reading Brene Brown stuff. So I think that was really interesting because she was a lot older than me. She was in her like late 50s and did a completely different part of her life. And so it was just, I think that experience gave me a lot of empathy and insight into what other people who are not like me go through in the industry. And it suddenly then became very obvious in our own industry, which is really, it's gotten like in the last 10 years, it's gotten a lot better, but there's still like such a focus on what you look like. And you see the big chain gyms, especially every summer starts rolling around and their advertisement starts coming out about bodies. And now with like Instagram, you're seeing the stuff all the time. But really Brene Brown stuff. And I'll share, so one of the things she talks about is, and she's done the research on this and she's looked at the research on this, is that shaming people doesn't create, because of the nature of shame, shaming people doesn't create long-term behavioral change. Because if you feel shame about something, it's the belief that there is something wrong with you as a person. So versus guilt, there's healthy guilt, which is guilt is like, I did something wrong. So,
right.
So like, if you eat, you're feeling bad and you eat a whole container of ice cream one night, and then the next morning you're like, oh man, I can't believe I ate that whole container of ice cream. Like that was a silly thing to do. I'll gotta change that. I'll change my thing. But if your language the next morning is am I allowed to swear?
I'm so
swear
awful.
on here. I won't say swear. Yeah, but if you say I'm so, and start saying a bunch of negative words about yourself. So I'm such a terrible, person. I don't respect myself. I all of this kind of language around that. Guess what? Like 2 nights later, maybe even that night, you're going to be eating ice cream again, because if we feel like there's something inherently wrong with us, we don't see that we can change. Because if there's just something wrong with us, then no matter what you do, it's going to stay that way. So that's the issue with shaming marketing, where we shame people. We might get them to sign up to our gym or our classes or something like that. But because they believe something's inherently wrong with them, it's not going to have long-term lasting results. So, yeah.
Well, I loved that. And I think that's one of those messages that I think, like you said, we've seen a lot of progress in the last 10 years or so within the fitness community, but I think there's still more progress to be made. And with leaders like you who are educators and who are highly respected, I think that is so impactful coming from that. So I want to thank you for reminding people of that. I want to pivot just a little bit. You mentioned earlier games, and that is one thing that I have really loved about your programming that you have. Yeah. So not necessarily from the what's the word I want to say, but like the class sets that you have. But let's talk a little bit about games and how that can be really supportive of a fitness community. I know things are a little different now, and I do want to talk about that right now during COVID. But how did you figure out that this can really be a secret sauce in fitness classes?
I want to say I was. I mean, I certainly wasn't the first person to start using it. I'm trying to remember some of the first ones I used. I picked up some through courses I did, and at the time, other books and things that were out there. But really, I think what I noticed was rather than just being something fun to do with your clients, instead of doing like a cookie cutter sort of sets and reps type routine that people would normally associate me with working out, was that it would get my clients to interact. And a bit later into my career as a group fitness instructor, doing that side of things, doing boot camps and things, was realizing that the more my clients connected and became a little community, the more they stuck around and the more they talked about it. And so it created this marketing sort of where they marketed for me. Whereas before that, I would have people sort of disappear and fall off the radar and stuff like that. So initially, I tried doing a lot of things outside of boot camp, like outside of the actual sessions, to build community. Like I recognized community was important, so I was like, all right, let's like have a barbecue on a Friday night, or sometimes we ran early morning sessions, so sometimes I'd like put on a breakfast or something like that, in the park afterwards. But yeah, what I found was the uptake on that wasn't as popular because people had to go to work or, they're just busy. And we lived like in the area around my boot camp. It's like about 10, 15 minutes from the middle of Melbourne. So it's like pretty close in Melbourne. And yeah, people are just busy there, like lots of young families, kids, things like that. So asking people to commit more time to do these sort of like community building activities didn't really work. So, but that's one of the things I started noticing was that in the games, because they were interacting with each other, learning each other's names, it was a great way, especially if you had new people coming in, that they could interact. And there's some of this community started for me. And then I was having more fun as a trainer as well, because I wasn't having to bring all the energy. Do you run early morning classes, Amy?
No, I do more of the mid-morning.
Okay, yeah.
Like 7:30, 8:30, something like that.
Oh, okay.
I used to do the 5 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
But my clients are the ones who typically have gotten the kids off to school and then they're taking a really early lunch, or they're stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
So it's so they're not like rolling out of bed and then getting there 10 minutes later.
But that it does happen, doesn't it? And you've got these people, who literally have only woken up 10 minutes ago and they're still waking up. And so, using games was like a great way to just sort of get the energy going. And then I wasn't having to pour, because otherwise as the trainer, you're having to be sort of using my hands to show up quite high to like sort of drag everyone's energy up. And you finish the session, you can be quite exhausted. But yeah, this way, the group would create the energy, and then I would, almost feed off the energy of the group. And it was much more sustainable as a trainer to have that approach as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's funny. I did a lot of classes for teen clients this summer. I typically have women, but then over the summer, a couple years ago, I recognized the need for teens, like the girls around here, and they wanted they still wanted a safe place, and they didn't want to be patronized because they were younger. Like they just wanted to work out. And it was really on my heart to give them a safe place where they could work out and learn form and have the attention that they needed. I actually have 2 teen boys. And so I saw the supervision level not at the point that I wanted as a parent, and particularly the male female mix. I just wanted a place for the girls.
Yeah.
And this year I was able to hold the classes, but what I did was I put cones 9 feet apart, and then I had everybody put their mats behind their cones. So they were all very physically distanced and had all these rules that we all have, right? Like no sharing of equipment and no touching. And it was, I missed it. Because I wasn't able to do the games. I wasn't able to even say like, hey, give someone a high five and tell her great job when you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, it was different. And you're totally right about the energy level. where a lot of it was more up to me rather than them creating that energy and kind of creating that snowball
Mhm.
where it would get bigger and bigger. So speaking of COVID, what are some of the challenges that you have seen as an educator, both from the trainer's perspective, but also where the trainers are sharing some of their participants' perspective? Like, oh my gosh, my clients are saying this, or they're frustrated with this. And I mean, what kind of challenges have you seen? Because your community is worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's because of that, it's really been like a mixed bag. Like some trainers have said, their clients have really embraced it, maybe because they've been able to put on classes at times they wouldn't normally. So, or, with kids home as well, like it's hard for them to get out and actually get somewhere physically. So being able to do stuff at home. Whereas other trainers have sort of found the other side, either like the region they're in has been hit really hard financially. So they've had to close up shop, or just not a good uptake of people, embracing sort of the online stuff. So I haven't seen any trends, and it's been difficult as someone who's trying to like support that community because it is so different. Like I just had someone the other day message me and say, hey, like we can share equipment and stuff again. This is someone who was on BootCraft, and can you start sharing more workouts again that use equipment? And they're like, I understand it, people are in other situations, but it's like, then down here, and they're just in the north of Australia, and down here in Victoria, like Melbourne's fully like locked down. Like they can only go out of the house for an hour a day. So yeah.
Whoa, really?
And
Oh my
it's all being
gosh.
enforced. Mandatory face masks, even down where I am out of Melbourne. Yeah. So it's so different because we had a second spike here. So it's the biggest thing that I've been recommending trainers do is to really be open to that, the fact that it's going to go up and down, that it's going to change. And so you kind of need to set things up at the moment so that you can sort of switch on and off parts of your business at the moment, depending on what's being asked or what sort of restrictions are in place. And I think, my hope is in like another 12 months, because, I think realistically we're not going to see what's the word? Not immunization. What's the word?
A vaccine.
A vaccine. Yeah, we're not going to see a vaccine probably for a while. So what I hope is that we'll start seeing, more technology and things like that being used to make sure people can still get together and be safe. Like more people will have like, those thermometers, and which I know are quite pricey, but maybe, that'd be fantastic if it could be like anyone can come to your sessions. You just have to take their temperature first. If we worked out that was a correlation, and then you could basically run a normal session. But if someone's temperature's over, it's like, sorry, you can't come today. So that would be my hope, like going forward, that we're going to see more tools and things like that, ways of detecting whether someone might have the virus or not.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that as an option in the future. That would be interesting and probably helpful. It's so hard to stay on top of the science right now, and so it's in terms of if that is a good indicator. I mean, sure, obviously, if one has a fever, then that's obviously a good indicator.
Yeah.
But it's like, how many people don't have the fevers and all that?
Yeah, because when people are asymptomatic, so it's super tricky,
right?
And it sounds like they're still learning. There's still so much they don't know. So hopefully that's my hope, though, as they find out more, at least there's a way we can live with what's going on, rather than like here we've had to lock down again. All the businesses are closed down, financially impacting so many people. And it's rough.
It is. Isn't it crazy? I mean, you and I have talked about coming on this show, or you coming on the
Yeah.
show, I think since January
Yeah.
or since you sent that email. And back in April, I was like, okay, everything's locked down. Maybe this would be a good time to do something. And let's just go ahead and record it. And then we can put it out in the fall. And you said, you were the wise one. You said, let's just kind of wait and see how things are. And I really didn't think we would. I mean, I just didn't know where we were going to be,
Yeah.
but we're still right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. You know, one of the things that I realized when, so what Texas did, or at least my area, was they went on super huge lockdown right at the beginning,
Yeah.
you know, like that mid-March to April, and then started opening up in May.
Yeah.
So when May came, and so I didn't have any classes. I did some Facebook Live classes, but that was just for anyone who wanted to come. I mean, that was just, I thought, I want to serve people, and this is the only way I know how to serve out of my home since we can't go anywhere. So that's what I did. And I know a lot of trainers started doing that as well. But once May turned and Texas started opening back up and we started meeting in person, and again, all of my classes are outside. So it was a lot easier to justify the distance and all of that because outside seems to be just a lot safer. I really realized how powerful the fitness community is. And my people missed their people.
Yeah.
I missed my people.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been one of the things that I don't think I realized how, I mean, I knew that they were special and I knew that how dear they were to me, but having that forced time away from each other really made me realize not only how much I needed them, but how the community needed each other. So, you know, here we are at the end of, or we're in August. I have to look down on my calendar to see what month we're in sometimes. I mean, how can fitness members either simulate or replicate a community when I think we're all realizing how important it is, but we still can't get together and do the things that we used to, even if we are still having classes. I mean, I still made my women space out, and we weren't doing the games, and we weren't doing the wheelbarrows, which they hated, but they laughed at, and all of that kind of stuff. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Except that it's difficult. I mean, we're like humans we're tribal. We're wired to have tribes, and that's why we, you know, go in communities, and we like to hang out with people who have a similar way of thinking as we do. And you know, one of the things I used to talk about a lot was how, you know, when you touch someone else, you get a little hit of oxytocin, and so that's like the feel good hormone, and so we get, you know, our brains reward us for like being in contact. And if we watch, you know, even someone else doing something nice for someone else, like helping someone else out, we get a little oxytocin hit as well. So you can imagine, like, yeah, in a group fitness session where you've got people encouraging each other, stuff like that, everyone, it's not, as long as like, as well as the endorphins and things that you'll get from exercising, you're also getting these oxytocin hits. And yeah, it's making us feel that way. And that was why with the games and stuff, I used to tell trainers, I'd say, get your clients to touch each other, you know, not in a weird way, but like, because like literally it'll start building these connections each time they touch, whether it's just a little high five or a little elbow touch or something like that. Sorry about that. So yeah, it's really tough when suddenly we're having to keep our distance because we're not wired to keep our distance. Like, we're not wired to thrive in that setting. And especially for people who are extroverts, which is like 2/3 of the population, they get their energy from being around people. Introverts are okay. I've got a friend who revealed to me that he hasn't left his house since April, and he's going to go for 12 months.
Whoa.
And he's like way down on the introvert scale. So he's just like, he's got a wife and a child, and so he's I mean, I'm an introvert as well, and even I'm like, I think you should leave the house. I don't know what like psychological stuff's going to go on for him in 12 months of doing that. He's probably going to really struggle to interact face to face with people. It's probably going to be, I found even after that first lockdown, which was, you know, probably like 6 to 8 weeks, that I could only last for about 15 minutes having a conversation with someone, and then I didn't know what to do. Like, this was fine talking. So so anyway.
Yeah, and it gets it kind of freaks you out. It's funny. Graduation season like around here is in May, and things had kind of opened up and people had loosened up. And I went to a graduation party at the very beginning of June, and it was outside, but where I was just talking with people, and it was at a really, like, my good friend was hosting it for her son. And so I'm sitting, she's off and around talking to all of the different people who were there. And I was talking to these lovely ladies who I enjoyed all of it, but it was kind of in the evening and the sun was setting, and you could just kind of see the spittle like flying from people's, like, I mean, we all do it, right? When we talk.
Yeah.
And then one of them landed on my cheek, and I was like, I have to get home. It was way too much for me to handle. And I texted my friend the next day, because she came up to me, she goes, "How are you doing?" I said, because I'm an introvert. I consider myself an introvert. And I said, "Honestly, I'm a little overwhelmed." She's like, "Yeah, I kind of am too." She's like, "I think you should go." I was like, it's a good friend when she tells you you should leave the party. But even just after those few months, even as someone who was leading some classes, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard, like not having the whole rabbit trail of things that could go wrong go through my head. And yeah, so I would like to hear how your friend does if he lasts the full 12 months, because that's a really long time.
Yes.
But that has nothing to do with the fitness community, but still that's that's interesting.
I don't think I fully answered your question.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
So that's all right. I was totally going off on a tangent. So it's like, so I think, but going back to that thing of like being tribal. So it's like, how can we think about ways to engage our tribe still, even though we're socially distant? So we can't do the oxytocin, we can't do, the touching and stuff like that. But how are there other ways that we can like unite towards a common goal? Or I mean, I know you listen to our podcast, The Trainers Tribe. So Dale, my co-host on that, he does a lot of stuff with play and stuff like that. And he's got these mission cards that he gives at the end of his session. So he was like drawing one and saying, okay, today you've got to, pay for someone else's coffee or something like that. And then they would all report back. So here we've got these sort of random acts of kindness we're doing. And then we come back together as a group and can report back on it. And that adds depth as well, because it's just going to change the nature of the conversation. So rather than getting online and having small talk, which works well maybe when you're face to face with someone because of all the other things that are going on in our bodies when we talk to someone face to face, I think one of the ways is to try and add some depth to our interactions online so that they feel more fulfilling in that way. And that's what we can do as trainers, sort of like, or anyone who's really like managing or leading a community group at the moment, thinking of stuff like that.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I have not yet listened to that episode, but I'll make sure that I go back and listen to it, which we'll make sure we tell everybody. We'll link to that down in the show notes. Yeah. Well, that kind of goes into the next question I wanted to ask you. Have you seen anything that's working really well? So like things like the cards that you're just talking about, or anything else that either your community of trainers or you have experienced that maybe my listeners, even if they're not, they may not be a fitness trainer, but they may go to a gym or they may be in one of the gyms that's offering at-home classes. So do you have any thoughts or suggestions of things that are working that maybe they can say, you know what, that sounds great. That is what I need, because our community has changed right now, and that they can take that to their trainers and say, hey, can we try this? Can we try the random acts of kindness or anything else? I mean, do you have any other little tips like that? Because I love that.
Yeah. So one thing I'm probably seeing that's working well is because so everyone's in some level of struggle at the moment. And just like as an aside, it's not helpful to try and compare struggle. Like
Right.
Going through hard things is going through hard things. So yeah, sure, your friend's parent might be in hospital right now on a respirator, and you're like, oh well, I can't really talk to them about the fact that I'm going crazy because my kid is homeschooling and all this stuff. But yes, you can, because
Right.
because we still, when we're struggling, we still need to be able to talk to other people. So I think that's one of the things I'm seeing done really well by some trainers is they're really leaning into sharing that with their communities. And going back to Brene Brown, she has this great quote, and she swear. Can I swear on this? Or,
Yeah.
okay, if you're listening,
you can't listen to Brene Brown, and
yeah,
you can't listen to her and not hear the
yeah. I guess that's true.
So,
She's texted as well, so you guys, yeah. But if you've got kids in the car, maybe or listening, you can just like maybe skip forward. But she's got this phrase, which is like "bitch with perspective," and I think that's so good. So it's like you can complain about something, but then add some perspective to it at the end. So I think sharing some of the struggles you're going through as a leader of your community, whether it's as an instructor or whatever, and then sharing maybe like what are some things you're doing about it, or what's a perspective that you've taken on it that's helped you, is a really good way, because there's going to be people out there who are going to be able to relate to that. And that's another way, to create connection is to be able to like show people that you can empathize with their situation too. So I know it's not like a little trick or something like that you can do at the end of your game, but I think it is important. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not a big social media user, so I don't necessarily do it there, but I'll do it in messages to friends and things like that. So yeah, it's up to you whether you want to do it like completely publicly or just start a WhatsApp messenger group or a WhatsApp group or something like that and get going in there.
Yeah, it is a fine line as well, particularly for people who are kind of naturally positive and upbeat.
Yeah,
I know it took me a long time to realize. It took me a really long time to realize that you can't take away someone's pain or hurt by trying to just say, yeah, but think about this way, or think about the positive aspect or something like that. I mean, I look back and I'm like, man, I really miss the boat in my relationships with that kind of stuff. And you're right. I mean, perspective is really important with that kind of stuff. And I think that was really nice within my community to be like, you know what? I know it could be worse, but I'm really struggling with this, and opening up and being able to share. Cause I think too, when the trainers share, it makes everyone feel like that's a safe space too. Cause it's like, well, if she trusts us, then, or if he trusts us, then I can trust the community as well.
That's a good phrase. Yeah. Safe space. So, or a safe container is a phrase I've heard. And that's one of the most important things you can do in your community. And yeah, it really comes from you. And if there's any other leaders in the community, really creating that and sort of setting the boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay, and then leading into that space, and yeah, dropping the judgment and things like that. I think that it really brings out the best in people as well, if you can lead that. So yeah, and that's where like the depth of conversations, so like asking questions that are beyond the surface. If you're a funny person, you can add in some humor to it, which can take off some of the fear around it. But if you're like kind of an intense person, then go ahead and just embrace that and lead with that as well.
Yeah. What kind of struggles do you think people are going to see when we actually we have that all clear? Or do you think there will be, or was it just like, yes, we're back. Here we are. High five.
Yeah, I think that happened a bit here when we initially came down for lockdown, which is probably why we had a second sort of spike.
A little wave.
Yeah. I think the big challenge, and it's not, I think there was a lot of fear as we started reopening and places started reopening that clients wouldn't come back because they've gotten too used to being online. Mm-hmm. But I think as you found, and as we are, we want to interact with those people again face to face. So I don't think that's going to be the big challenge. I think, and and even in terms of people's fear of interacting with groups and things like that, there might be a little bit of that, but I think people's innate desire to want to like interact with other people is going to overcome that. So as long as you're clear about what cleanliness stuff you're doing,
right,
you'll be okay. What will be interesting to see is that I know like a lot of the big apps out there, so people who are already quite established in terms of, so do you know who Chris Hemsworth is? He plays Thor in the Marvel movies.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's an Australian guy.
I was going through the Hemsworth brothers.
Okay, yeah.
There's a couple of them, right? Yeah, I was
he's
like, which one is he?
The middle one, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's brought out this app at like just like a few months before all this hit, like good timing. And so they've been pushing hard. But I think they've seen like growth like 600% or something like that. So what'll be interesting is to see. I think it'll be more like gyms and stuff like that. That will be impacted because people who are used to working out by themselves may not go back to the gym because they're like, I've bought some equipment now. The company I buy a lot of my gym equipment from, I've got a home gym. They've just been like sold out for like 6 months because everyone's buying stuff, and as soon as they get stuff in, it sells out. And so I think it's maybe like the gyms and the 24-hour fitness centers and stuff like that we might see get impacted. But I think that like the boot camps and the group stuff and the stuff that's more about bringing people together, we won't see a huge difference. If anything, we'll see a spike because we might get a bit of that from the gyms as well, because the gyms will be like, people will be like, oh, I don't know if I want to go back to a gym and train indoors. Like I'd rather go try something new.
Yeah. I had a couple new faces for that very reason. They were like, the place that I go to is open, but I'm just not sure I'm ready for that. And they really were wanting the outdoor environment. So, and it sounds like too, I think there's a real call to trainers and maybe even to leaders within. You don't have to be the trainer leading the class. Maybe you just need to be a leader within the class. You know, they're all there, but of creating that community of when it's safe, you know, doing the high fives or the fist bumps and really kind of trying to make those little points of connection to help grow that community. Cause I think I know I personally have realized how important that is and how critical that is for, just for my overall sanity, if nothing else. I want to shift to a little bit broader for one of our last questions. As a trainer, what is something you wish your clients embraced a little bit more, understood a little bit more about their fitness in general?
Oh, that's an easy one. And I think it's really that it's a journey, and I hate using it's a lifestyle, a way of life, but it's the little things, the little decisions you make day to day that really set you up to be healthy. It's not the cleanse you go on or the like, so vegan diet has been becoming more popular. Netflix brought out a couple of documentaries, and now we've seen this carnivore diet become where you only eat meat come out. I don't know if you've heard much about that. So you just have like one big meat meal a day. And, like we can talk about the research of like elimination diets, the studies they've done where they've looked at those studies long-term, because often studies done on diets, you only see, like the results in 30 or 60 or 90 days. And so it's like, oh yeah, look how much weight this person lost. But there's some really good studies that are now being done where they've gone back and they've looked at all these studies like 12 months later, 24 months later. And on average, people are heavier at 12 months to 24 months than they were before they started the diet. So they've actually gotten kind of, and part of that could be like the shame stuff we were talking about before, the reasons why people are dieting. So that's my big thing. It's like, it's really about, it's not about changing everything at once, because that's unsustainable.
Right.
It's about just doing little things each day, and over time, your interest will grow as well. So it's a much more like natural, slower approach to it. Um, yeah, and yeah, I guess it's like you have to be a little bit more patient as well. But it's good because you're not having to change your whole life to try and like change yourself
Yeah.
into something else. You can still be who you are and just make little changes, and over time that'll snowball. So I think that's a big thing.
I completely
And
agree.
that's
Yes, I completely agree. And the problem with it is the word that I use is it's not very sexy.
yeah,
Like
no,
it's, you don't have these big, huge results because you haven't been making big, huge
yeah,
changes. You've just been making the small ones, and
yeah,
it does take time. And you want the sexy after picture, like we talked about at the beginning
yeah,
of this. But it's one of the things that I've been writing in my book. Like, those don't make the headlines. I
no,
don't When I'm scrolling through my Apple News at lunch, I don't see anything that says women made small change, just one small change every day. And after 18 months, she reached her goal weight. Like, that just doesn't exist in our news media. And it
no,
drives me crazy because that's what we're wanting for our clients, are
yeah,
those small changes.
yeah,
Or even if it's just showing up, and maybe you don't give
yeah,
it your all, that's okay. You showed up. So yeah, I completely agree.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So Kyle, go on.
I just something else to say on that. So I think part of it, there is like an element of getting clients results fast, but I think setting the expectations from the start, so sharing with them about that this is like small changes over time, and then talking to them, because we're not like, human beings aren't linear, so it's like progress is never going to be linear. Like, you're going to have this thing happen
Mm-hmm.
in your family, you're going to have that, and you're going to have this, and so you need something that's going to sustain you through all of that. But you can still help someone get results fast by, like, say, building a habit really quickly, because habits can be built
Right.
pretty quickly. So you can help someone feel. There's a yoga instructor I follow on YouTube, and so she just recently did like a 30 days, 10 minutes of yoga every morning, and she has a little video, and so that's like 10 minutes out of your day. But immediately after that 10 minutes, I feel better, and then let alone after like a week later, I feel better from doing that every day. And then by the end of the 30 days, it's like, oh, I've actually built a new habit, and it feels weird now not to do the yoga in the morning. Yeah, so there's still little things we can do like that, but it's not going to be, the like lose 3 belt sizes in 3 weeks or anything crazy like that.
Right. Well, and then at my age, a lot of my clients are around my age, give or take 10 years. And what I really have started hearing is, I don't care so much about what I look like. I just want to take care of myself, because they've invested time into their kids. They've invested time into their marriage and their jobs and
Yeah,
all of the other things. And now they're realizing, gosh, I haven't invested the time in myself. And now that's really kind of coming back to bite me in the butt.
yeah,
And so that's good guidance for me too, of like, let's talk about the kind of changes that you're going to see in here. And it might not be that your dress size changes or the scale changes, and that's okay,
yeah.
because you're just wanting to take care of yourself. Well, let's talk about what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly. What does that really look like? The media, advertising,
Yeah.
everything like that tells us that it's looking like a certain way. But if you really get down to like what it is for yourself, it might be just being able to like, keep up with your kids, or, just having more confidence in yourself, which will naturally happen through exercising, because you can see what your body will do, and that'll change your perception of how you feel about your
Yeah.
body too. So yeah, it is different.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really fun when you see those success stories. I had a client a couple years ago, did like a intro level class that I ran, and she and her family had gone to the beach, and they had one of those like big inflatable obstacle courses that are like on the water. And she sent a picture, and she said, I never would have been able to do this without our classes. And because she said, I never would have had the strength or the confidence. And so like that, she did that with her kids.
Yeah,
It gives me chills just thinking about it still, because that's the kind of thing that we want to see, especially again, you get those teenagers who are active and able to do things, and you want to be able to do it with them.
yeah,
It's one thing when they're 3 and 5. I mean, of course, they've got a different kind of energy
Yeah.
level.
I'm experiencing that at the moment.
Yeah. Because you have your little girl
Yeah,
is
she's
like
nearly 2.
two
Yeah,
or
she's 2 next
2.
month. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of running around.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you open to a question that I have been wanting to ask my guests for a while,
Yep.
but I've never quite had the nerve?
Oh, yeah.
Not that it's like not that it's anything to make you nervous.
Lay it on me. Yeah.
But I am fascinated by tattoos and body art.
Mm-hmm.
I have had some of the most interesting conversations. And when you talk about being vulnerable, I mean, like where we're both in tears with someone telling me about the phoenix that, the vibrant phoenix that was on her shoulder and how it related to her dad. So I just love that. Now, I personally don't have any, not because I'm against it. I just have never really felt like, okay, this is what I want to have and wear.
Yeah.
But so my question to you is, do you have any tattoos? And if so, would you like to share the story behind, one of them if you have more than one? And if you don't, what would you get and where?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any tattoos. Same reason as you, because I feel like there's always a significant story behind them. I didn't want to just get like some tribal art around my arm or something like, to just be for the sake of having one. I think like a few years ago, like 5-10 years ago, it's probably more appealing to me. But I think at this point in my life, I'm like, no. And you always hear like that, once you start, you can't stop. So I feel like it's a really disappointing answer to your question. I'm like the first person, and when you said about tattoos, I was like, oh no, I don't have, and I don't really have like a hungry for that either.
For one.
Yeah.
Kyle, thank you for coming on today. I do want to thank you too, just for your leadership within the trainer community and offering us not only the nuts and bolts of leading our classes from a fitness perspective and a physicality, but also for leading us in being more emotional with our clients and, vulnerable. I know that's a big thing if you're a Brene Brown fan, as I am, and just kind of teaching us to connect with them and helping to build that community, because that's obviously a really important aspect of our social well-being as well as physical well-being.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a real treat. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, tell people how they can connect with you if they would love to listen to your podcast or anything else.
Yeah. If you're a trainer, you can, probably the easiest place is just to go to bootcampideas.com and everything's there. And then if you want to follow more what I'm doing, I'm starting to explore the space of community building and like creating areas for people to hang out and stuff like that, online and offline. I don't see why it's similar stuff for both. So you can just read that at my personal blog, which is kylewood.me. Those would be the two places. And then, like I said, I'm not a big, I don't post frequently enough on social media for people to probably want to follow me on there. But you can find, if you do want, you can find links to those websites.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely I ebb and flow in my social media. Sometimes I'm great with, I like the connection part, but I don't really like the posting part.
Yeah.
It's hard to connect if you're not posting unless you just go to other people's, online homes or whatever. So, all right. Well, thank you so much again. And even though I am signing off late my time of the day or later, have a good day because you've got most of your day left.
I do. Yeah. Just getting started.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the first time I've ever asked anyone about that tattoo question. So I definitely need to, now I've done it. I'm like, okay, I can ask this again. So I will be trying to ask people in the future, though I do have to tell you, I have several interviews I've already recorded that will be coming out. So you won't hear that necessarily in the near coming episodes, but I'll start asking those again. I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Kyle. I just think he's so great. And what I really appreciate about him is he doesn't just do the nuts and bolts. He really helps us get into the psyche of ourselves and helps us emotionally connect with our clients and with our community. And I think that this conversation might help you connect with your own community. You don't have to be a fitness leader to implement some of this stuff. So I really, I hope you got some value from that. I know that I certainly did. Hey, if you have not yet subscribed to the show, I invite you to do that. Rate and review it if you can. I also, did you know, I have a ton of resources out there for you. I have a 14-day body image devotional I would love to give you. You can find that at gracedhealth.com/devotional. I'll put that in the show notes. Don't worry. And then I also invite you to receive my monthly journal. I take notes all month long on little snippets and things and ways that I want to serve you. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's workouts, either from me or other trainers that I know. Sometimes they're just little funny things. I got a lot of response on what my latest favorite bra is. So, which doesn't really apply to any of the dudes listening to this, unless you want to get it for, your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. But, anyway, that I have a lot of fun putting that together. I would love for you to join me in that. You can't get it online. It's email only. You can go to gracedhealth.com/monthly-updates to receive that. Again, that'll be in the show notes today. What's the one simple thing I want you to remember? Do not discount the power of your community. If you miss them, that is normal. You are not alone. We were meant to be together. We were meant to move together. And so if you are really struggling with not having your people around you in your fitness, that's normal. That's normal right now. Just find another way to connect with them. And hopefully this podcast gave you some ideas. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.